name is Castagna. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Mannkind Corporation, the makers of Afrezza. Today we have an inhalant on the market, and we're going to share some information with you in Pharmacy Edge.
Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I went to Philadelphia College of Pharmacy. I graduated in the year 2000. Started working at CVS in 1995 as a pharmacy technician. And then coincidentally, I got a job also in a hospital because I had to pay for school. I was on my own. And I got a job at Kennedy Health System in South Jersey, Philadelphia area where I'm from. And in that job, I met a pharmacist who said, "What are you going to do in your career?" I said, "Well, I'm either going to go to medical school or business school, I'm not sure." And he brought me down to meet some pharmacists who worked in the pharmaceutical industry. And I wound up meeting 10 pharmacists and everything from R&D to marketing to sales, all kinds of different jobs. And so it's funny how one decision in your life takes you one path or another. So that decision put me on the path to the pharmaceutical industry, and I decided that was going to be my passion and my focus. And so from there, I continued hospital. I worked for DuPont Pharmaceuticals in 1997. And when I finished pharmacy school, they put me out in the sales force, and I did that. And then I was there through Bristol-Myers bought DuPont. And so that was how I got ultimately kept growing my career and building out my skills. And from there, I went into marketing roles, sales roles, brand turnaround roles, company turnaround roles, division turnaround roles. And so it's been nothing but a great career in healthcare. I've really enjoyed. I hate to say this, I don't feel like I've ever worked a day in my life, because when you're helping patients and you're bringing back good to society, you can't pay someone enough money to do that. And so I just feel like every day, my role as an executive in this industry is to help patients. And the more people we help, the better our society will be. And I spent 10 years in HIV and hepatitis, working in those disease states from 97 when people were dying, in 96 to, I worked with Gilead to do the 1 pill once a day regimen and HIV. And I remember in 05 when I left Bristol-Myers, I said people with diabetes have a little more difficult life because of how many pills they had to take and the combinations. And then here I am 12 years later, and guess what? People with diabetes still have a very difficult life. And so as much progression and innovation as we've been delivering in cancer and HIV and hepatitis, we still have the biggest disease burden in this country with really huge unmet needs. And so, I got started really through some luck, being in the right place at the right time, hard work. And I've been in a lot of great companies. I've worked for Novartis, building out biosimilars, for the first division of biosimilars in the US, back in 2008, 2009, when nobody was even thinking about these things. And then went back to Bristol-Myers after a hiatus for a couple of years. And then I left Bristol-Myers to come back to Amgen a couple of years ago, 4 years ago. I went to work for Amgen and help revitalize that company as we were going through a transformation. And then ultimately, I wound up here at Mannkind, so I can talk about that.
And why did you decide to take the position as Chief Commercial Officer?
So I was really happy at Amgen. They treated me very well. And when I saw Sanofi gave the product Afrezza back to Mannkind, I reached out to the CEO here and I said, "Hey, you're going to have to turn this thing around and relaunch it." And there's not a lot of people who do that in my industry. And brands don't always relaunch well the second time, so there's very few people who've done it successfully. And so we had a good discussion, but I'll be honest, I went and did my own market research. I talked to some patients directly, and that was surprising. Every patient I talked to loved this drug. It made so much difference in their life and in their quality of life every single day. And they were worried, they were nervous because they saw Sanofi walked away and they didn't know what was going to happen. And so from there, I was very interested in trying to help Mannkind. And then I talked to the doctors, and that was the disappointing side of the job, was when I talked to physicians, they just didn't understand the battle their patients face every single day. They don't know the troubles, they don't know how food affects people, they don't understand how it affects them, but living with this disease, it's a very difficult process for patients. It's a daily reminder every time you eat, drink, breathe, of what happens to your sugars. And so I think, unfortunately for physicians, they're just so busy that they just say, "Oh, the pens are easy, they're small needles, it's not a big deal." That's not the issue. The issue is all about, do you have to count carbs? Do you get your insulin? In fact, are you on high and low? How are you feeling throughout the day? And so I took the job knowing it was going to be a difficult run, but I know in the end, good drugs always succeed and patients always win. And so we got to help physicians understand how to use our product appropriately, help pharmacists understand how to help patients. But in the end, when you have a great drug and you have people happy, guess what? That usually succeeds. And sometimes it happens slower, sometimes it happens faster. But I feel very confident that we have a great winner on our hands, and we'll really change the face of diabetes in the long term.
How has being a pharmacist shaped your career, leading you to where you are today?
That's a great question. I always pride myself in being a pharmacist. When I was building my career, I remember thinking like, hey, I'm in the sales force, there's hundreds of thousands of reps in the field, and I always differentiate because I was the only pharmacist a lot of times. And so my teams, I was always the youngest guy, so I knew the data and inside and out. Doctors respected me, and I could always talk about the science, and that is what differentiated me along my career. When I started building my career in the home office, working with other marketers and business people, nobody had science backgrounds, and that was for me, I was like, how do you run the pharmaceutical industry and not have a science background? And you realize some people just learn it and they love it and they don't have to have the science. But for me, it helped me accelerate my career. It helped me build collaborations with my medical R&D colleagues. It helped me understand the perspective of the physician more. I actually practiced pharmacy all the way up until about 6 years ago, part-time. And I always did that not for the money, but just to see and be reminded of the issues patients face every single day. And what are the challenges pharmacies face? And, what are it was always about tech hours and budgets and inventory, and it wasn't always about talking to the patient, helping the patient. And I worked in stores that did 500 scripts a day, 1,000 scripts a day. You don't have time to breathe, and so that is pharmacy a lot of days. And I always tell kids that are thinking about what to do in their career, I'm like, stick with pharmacy. There's so many options. You don't know where it's going to take you, what doors it opens, but at the end of the day, if you want to help people and you want to enjoy what you do, it's about what doors you go into. And if you're in community pharmacy, you're not happy, there's other channels. You're in hospital, you're not happy, go somewhere else. But there's always something to do. There's always people who be good people and help. So that's really what I chose. My pharmacy degree has helped me a tremendous amount. I went back and got my doctorate degree a couple years ago. And not because I needed it. I mean, it wasn't going to help me build my career any faster, but honestly, it was just a nice challenge, personal challenge to get that doctorate degree and work with students who were going through it as well. Those guys worked full-time in hospitals, and you could see the struggles they were having and do that. So, I always believe in continuing your education and challenging yourself and innovating yourself. And, you take curveballs that life throws at you and you pick them up and run. And so, for me, that's what's always guided me. And so pharmacy has been, really monumental in terms of my North Star. And when I think about science and, ethics and morals and how we operate as a pharmaceutical industry, when you have good science, the rest starts to fall in place and makes your job a lot easier. And so I always work, I always focus on brands that really make a difference in people's lives. If you look at the drugs I've worked on, they're not your typical me-too drug. I really try to do things that are different.
How do you see Afrezza changing the diabetes therapy landscape? For instance, Afrezza is a significant change from traditional injected insulin. Do you see Afrezza eventually becoming a diabetic's primary therapy, or do you find that diabetics may use it to supplement their treatment by reducing the number of shots they take in a day?
That's a great question. First, people who have diabetes like to call people with diabetes not diabetics. So it's just something that I've learned in this job in the last year. And I think you really got to segment out the populations. There's a type 1 population who go on pumps or they inject themselves multiple times a day, and there's something called diabetes burnout, and they just get tired of it, and they're just tired of worrying about their sugars. They're tired of injecting themselves. They're tired of lifting their shirt up at a restaurant, and so they skip their doses. And so that's if you skip, there's some data out there saying 1 out of 5 patients potentially miss their doses. Right, so if 20% of the population is not dosing their drug correctly, how do you get population health down and get A1Cs under control?
How do you see Afrezza changing the diabetes therapy landscape? For instance, Afrezza is a significant change from traditional injected insulin. Do you see Afrezza eventually becoming a person with diabetes primary therapy, or do you find that people with diabetes use it to supplement their treatment by reducing the number of shots they take in a day?
That's a great question. I mean, it's one that, we're indicated for type 1 and people with type 2 diabetes. And, Al Mann, who's the founder of this company, he spent $1 billion of his own money to make Afrezza a success and get it to market. 25 years of history here. And so it's been a long road coming to bring this product to market. And we didn't do this to be a last line of resort. We did this to help the major part of the population. There's tens of millions of people have pre-diabetes. There's 22 million people diagnosed and treatment with diabetes today. And we view this as a mainstream option to help drive people's success. Even sitting here today, 1 out of 2 people across all diabetics are not under control. Their A1C is greater than 7. That's the goal of 7. When you move to people taking insulin, there's about 3.5 million people taking insulin actively. 70% of them are not below 7. So when you think about, we've been doing the same thing for the last 3 decades of Humulin N, Humulin R, MPH, Humalog, NovoLog. Nothing's really changed. A1Cs haven't moved significantly in the last 20 years. And that's on top of all the pump innovation and continued glucose monitoring. We're not making a dent. And so if we keep doing the same thing we're doing, we can expect the same outcome. And so, you ask me, we're going to help change the landscape of diabetes. I think the answer is yes. We have to get this to be more of a mainstream, used up front, to help people get their sugars under control. And then people ask me why, and I say because when you sit with somebody who's living with diabetes and they inject themselves, and you see an hour later they're still waiting for their insulin to kick in. You sit with an Afrezza patient, 5 minutes later on their monitor, you can see your sugars dropping. That's real-time control. I don't know about you, but I'm a very impatient person. I couldn't wait for an hour to figure out that I do it right or do it wrong. And so that's a lot of what these people go through every single day is, did I miss it? Did I overshoot? Did I undershoot? And then their sugars are high, and then their sugars are low. Then they're drinking sugar to catch they try to get it back up, and it's just a yo-yo lifestyle. And the biggest thing is the impact on the spouse or partner in someone's life. I never really thought about that aspect of the caretaker, right? If you're a parent of a child, we're not indicated for pediatrics, but we're going in that direction. When your spouse has diabetes, you have diabetes because you got to watch what you eat. You can't enjoy dessert. You can't enjoy your family vacation. And if I just told you how many letters we get from patients saying thank you, from spouses saying thank you for giving my husband back, first family dinner we had in a long time, you can't buy that. And that's the impact we have on people. So the more people succeed and try our drug and dose it right, they're going to be fine. And the more they're going to tell their friends. And that's really, word of mouth is the best advertising. And you can look on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, and when you see people vote, they vote for our product, right? They're happy that they're on it. We just had a shareholder meeting last week. People are crying. They're just saying, you saved my life. You changed my life. And that's stuff that clinical trials can't always deliver. But when doctors try this drug and they see they give their patients their life back, people are happy. You want happy customers. I want happy customers. And so I always say, if people could vote like they do on eBay about how they like you, and we would win the vote all day long, right? And so, it's just a matter of getting doctors and patients to talk about what they're dealing with. And today we treat people to failure. That's our guidelines say treat to failure, right? Add 1 drug, add 2 drugs, add 3 drugs, add basal, and that's our guidelines. Treat until you absolutely need insulin as a 6th resort. Why? It's one of the few conditions I've worked in where you're missing a supplement, you should replace it, right? We do it in enzyme disorders, we do it in growth hormone, we do it in fertility. Somehow when you're short on insulin, what we do is we try to do everything else but give you insulin. And so for me, it's about giving you back what you're missing, and that should be used earlier, and I see it as a mainstream product. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to happen.
Some pharmacists may remember Pfizer's Exubera and how the product flopped. How do you respond to those that have concerns from Pfizer's drug failing to live up to the hype?
Well, I think, I would say Pfizer's drug didn't flop. They just wanted to make more money than they could have, and so they shut it down. But they had 20-some thousand patients on the drug when they made that choice. And so, had they kept investing, maybe it would have been successful, even more. But every company's got to make trade-offs, and they made a decision that Exubera wasn't going to stay on the market. Now, Alman persisted with Afrezza, right? And he kept delivering in that. In fact, when you look at, I wasn't here at the time, so I can't, support or deny, but when you look at this is what Exubera looked like, and they thought this thing was going to change the world. Well, if I'm sitting in a restaurant, this is the last thing I wanted to be doing in public, right? And so did it flop? I don't know. Did they have the wrong device? Was it dosed differently? Yeah, but at the end of the day, I look at that and say it had an opportunity, and people, they were still a needle and syringe maybe, but there were pens and it was in pumps and a little bit easier. But if you compare that, if you compare Exubera to Afrezza, just from a device, I think Alman was focused on the engineering of how to get the best device to deliver insulin, not necessarily the best clinical package on what's going to help you understand how to win with this drug. And so, from that perspective, I think we did a great job showing you can go from this to this. And then everyone else has shut down their insulin, right? No one else has inhaled insulin. There's nothing else coming. We're it. And so when you get something as easy as this, you literally you take the cap off, you open it up, you put your little cartridge in. It comes in 4 8s and 12s, and you close it. So snap, click, inhale. That's it. I just got my insulin, and in 1 second, it's in and out of your lungs, right? You can't beat that. So people always say, what about the lungs? Insulin on the lungs? Well, in 1 second, this drug transports through your lungs just like it goes through your skin. It's in your blood system and it starts working, right? And that's why it has this fast onset of action. In 5 minutes, it starts working because it's already in your bloodstream and it's working. Just like an IV drip in a hospital, an insulin drip, you get this huge uptake and then it kind of comes down. And within 2-3 hours, it's pretty much out of your body. So you don't have to worry about insulin stacking. You don't have to worry about all the problems you deal with when you're on injectable insulin that take 4 to 6 hours to work. So there's a big difference here in quality of life and in products and even Exubera. Exubera was more like NovoLog than it's like Afrezza. And so you got to look at the PK profile of the drug, and that's really our differentiator is how the drug works, how fast it works, and how fast it's out of your body. And so I wouldn't compare an apple and an orange, which really Exubera and Afrezza are. They just happen to be inhaled. That's about the only thing they have in common. But there's a lot of good history there. And there's a lot of concerns about lung, and I think from our perspective, if you have asthma and COPD, it's probably not the right product. If you're currently smoking, probably not the right product. But the other 80% of the people in the country, it is the right product for it, right? There's no reason you shouldn't try this. You need a small lung test in the office that they track the first year, and then once a year thereafter. And it's just like doctors raise a big stink over, I got to test the lung function. Well, primary care docs do that all day long, and it's no problem. So why all of a sudden you're going to tell me as an endocrinologist, the primary care doc can do something you can't? So that doesn't make sense. And so it's really, they're just excuses. And so how do we help doctors understand, what is the lung function test? It's a simple FEV1 test. It takes 1 second, you do it 3 times, you take the highest value, you come back in 6 months and a year. And I tell people, you test A1Cs, you test kidney function, you test everything else about a person. It's just one more thing. And what people forget is your lung is an organ, and diabetes attacks your lung just like it attacks any other thing in your body. So when you have high sugars, guess what? You're causing eye damage, you're causing lung damage, you're causing nerve damage, right? And heart damage. So you want your sugars under control, and that's got to be the focus we get back to, is how do I get my sugars less than 7? Because the reason 70% of people aren't on insulin is because they're afraid to push their dose too low, or their dose too high to push their sugars too low to go hypoglycemic. And so if you have an insulin that can help maybe cause less of that, we have that, our data wasn't exactly perfect. But I think when you look across the thousands of patients we studied, you see some nice trends on severe hypoglycemia. You also see trends on people underdosing and how they dose better. And that to me is the key to this drug, is dosing it correctly, which I know we'll talk about. So.
Independent pharmacists are facing stiff competition to national chain drugstores. And one way independent pharmacists are addressing the competition is spending more time with patients that have chronic health issues such as diabetes. Do you offer any resources that independent pharmacists could take advantage of if they wanted to offer services to help patients transition to using Afrezza, or patients that currently use Afrezza but are having trouble titrating their dosages?
You look at independent pharmacy, and it's been a fight for the last 22 years I've been in pharmacy, right? I mean, they have survived, they've reinvented themselves, the margins are tight, they're not paid for their services, right? I mean, we as a pharmacy profession have lost some of our ability to negotiate and leverage reimbursement for our services, and that's a shame. But when it comes to Afrezza, we're not yet in that channel in terms of tools and resources for them. Our local reps, we tell them to call in the pharmacies, make sure they stock the drug, or they can get the drug quickly from the wholesaler. We have demo inhalers we could teach the pharmacist, but I think the one thing pharmacists can help with is, I can tell you 80–90% of people with diabetes have no idea this is even an option for them. So when we go to the conferences and we talk to patients at ADA and JDRF, like, how come my doctor never told me about this? Are you kidding me? I gave myself 1,000 injections in the last 6 months, and I could have avoided that. And people get scar tissue, they get tired of it. And so how do pharmacists help make people aware that there are options if they're struggling? If you're using your insulin correctly, you're not using it correctly, and that's that's something I would ask from pharmacists is let people know there are options. And when it comes to titrating my drug, it takes about a week for people to really figure out how to dose it and when to dose it. And there's YouTube videos, and there's other patients who will help people. I mean, our patients will always help another patient. They're so happy, and they pay it forward. And for pharmacists, it's if you're taking, I'll make it up, 8 units of NovoLog, and you convert to our drug, our package insert says convert to 8 units, which is an 8-unit cartridge. But the reality is that patient may need 12. They got to dose up quickly, and I think that's where pharmacists can help and say, an apple and an orange can't be the same. And that's where a lot of people mess up with Afrezza. Like, I took 8. I used to take 8 of NovoLog. Why isn't it working? Well, it's insulin. If you give enough of it, it works. Sometimes you got to titrate your dose up. Sometimes you got to adjust your basal insulin. And these are things that pharmacists can learn, right, and understand. And I would tell you as a pharmacist, titrate up our patients quickly, because there were 10,000 people who started this drug, and probably a lot of them fell off because they didn't get the right dosing right up front. And that to me was unfortunate in the first year of launch. And so we actually have designed new packaging to help out with this. And so today you see we're relaunching 8-unit boxes and 12-unit boxes. So you'll have 90 cartridges of each one. When it first launched, there was all these combos, and nobody could really figure out which one to pick. And so we tell people there's 4, 8, 12, 90 count boxes to pick from. But if I was a new patient starting out, I would start out on either a titration box, 4, 8, and 12. We have another titration box which has 94-unit, 98 cartridges. So I always tell people, if you're a higher dose insulin patient, get the 12-unit cartridges. And if you need 20 units, you take a 12 and an 8. If you need 24 units, you take 2 12s. So it's additive, so it's quite easy to use. And you shouldn't be afraid to titrate your dose until you have a postprandial high that you're happy with. But check your sugars in 1 or 2 hours, and if you're not happy with where you are, you better take another dose and get your sugar under control. So this is as close to you want. You know, when you eat, your insulin shoots up, right? And you want it, your insulin starts working to bring your sugars back down. If you have another drink of wine, your sugars shoot up. You want to, you know, take your insulin. So to me, you know, that's what your pancreas does. If you keep eating, your pancreas keeps producing insulin. So, you know, use our drug, you know, to help manage your sugars in a real-time way.
Do you have any suggestions to pharmacists on setting up services to consult with their patients on new and innovative drugs like Afrezza to allow them to compete in today's marketplace?
Yeah. You know, for me, I hope the pharmacy profession really helps people with diabetes. It's a huge unmet need. It's 22 million consumers. It's probably the third biggest healthcare cost. It's the #1 reason for hospitalizations when you take out trauma and things like that. And so when you look at how many people aren't doing well with diabetes, I think pharmacists are the frontline caretakers that if they really learn and try and help their people understand, you know, the importance of taking your medicine, the importance of measuring your sugar, the importance of, you know, if you need insulin, don't be afraid of insulin. I think you should have a negative perspective of, hey, I don't want insulin, that's the last resort. And, you know, we all have an uncle who lost a leg or an eye or something. You know, it's unfortunate. And I watched my own family go through this, right? We all have a family member who's been severely impacted by diabetes. And I think it's unfortunate. It's like, you know, a smoker. You know, you smoke for 20 years, you think you're cool, and then when you're 60, you get a tumor on your lung, and you're like, God, I wish I didn't do that 30 years ago. You can't change that. And unfortunately, that's what happens with diabetes. If we can catch people early enough and control their sugars, they're going to live as normal of a life as you can possibly expect. But if they don't manage their sugars in their 30s and 40s, it catches up to you in your 60s and 70s, right? And so, for me, pharmacists can really help people in the early stages of their disease, and people that are in the later stages, you know, get them under control, because, you know, people are living longer. I mean, you know, I hope to live to be 90, and if I'm 60 and my sugars are still out of control, I hope that I have someone helping me, pick me up and say, you know, your sugars aren't doing well, sir. Here's what you can do. Here are the tools you have. And there's so much technology coming. Continuous glucose monitoring. Abbott's launching a new device. There's a lot of technology coming where you can just monitor your sugar all day on your iPhone. So you don't, you know, you may be able to just wear a sensor, and probably in the next 2-3 years, you're gonna be able to wear a sensor once a week and change it, and you'll get your iPhone all day long, right? But now you're gonna go crazy because you're gonna see your sugar bouncing, and you're gonna say, well, is that oral tablet working? Well, you might need a product like ours, right? So that's why people ask me, why am I excited? Because if you can see real time what your body's doing and then adjust your sugar quickly, you win, right? And there's no pill I can take that's gonna work as fast as our drug, right? And you know, pills work differently than insulin, but you know, people start seeing, wow, I can just manage my disease by a simple, you know, almost like you take Advair, right? You know, asthma wasn't a chronically treated condition 20 years ago. You know, all my buddies used to have those things shaking them, and, right? And now you got people on insulin. You know, I was at a Starbucks a few weeks ago, and I hear a woman whistle, and I look back, and she's like, oh, he caught me. What was it? You know, she felt like she was doing something. And I pulled my Afrezza out of my pocket. She was like, oh my God, another patient. She got so excited. And so, I, you know, in the future, I hope as we go to Starbucks, someone can enjoy their Starbucks and control their sugar. That's the best thing in the world, right? Is she's living her life. She's drinking a coffee with her friend. And most people with diabetes can't do that because they're worried about the sugar spiking, right? And so it's not an enjoyable moment. And, you know, but she was smart enough. She took a puff of our drug and controlled her sugar and then continued her conversation. She was just so happy. And, yeah, so that was good.
With the many changes occurring in the industry, how do you think innovative drugs like Afrezza are going to be impacted by insurance plans, PBMs, and programs like Medicare and Medicaid as it relates to reimbursements for your customers?
Yeah. You know, it's really tough anymore in launching new drugs because insurance companies used to allow a drug to be covered, and then in 6 months or a year they'd make a decision. Now they start with the opposite, mainly because we've solved a lot of unmet needs in healthcare, right? If you take your drugs, they work. And so now health plans say, well, I already have a drug for cholesterol, so I'm going to block it for the first year and then decide if I want to put it on formulary. And then, you know, depending on how many restrictions they put, it makes the prior auth more difficult, it makes the doctor's time more difficult, it makes the patient's life more difficult. And a lot of people just give up. And so the insurance companies are probably happy because they're stopping innovation from progressing. But then I ask ourselves, you know, we're bringing drugs we think they make a difference in people's lives, and doctors are prescribing them because they're trying to help a patient, but everything around that patient's a hurdle. And then when you get into some of these drugs, they're not real high price points sometimes. You know, if you're you know, 5,000 sounds like a lot, or 10,000 a year, believe me, I know it is. But in the general drug distribution, if you have a cold chain product like an insulin, and you gotta, as a pharmacist, dispense it, you're not paid for your free shipping costs. You're not paid for the prior authorization support. So, you know, health plans reimburse you just for processing a prescription. And sometimes 30, 40, 50% of the prescriptions have to be yanked out of your pharmacy and shipped off somewhere else. And that kills all the work. And so we got to really make sure the healthcare ecosystem is there to focus on the patients. And right now, I think there is a lot of squeezing the margins out, squeezing profitability out, and the health plans want to put all these restrictions in place for patients' access to care, but there's no incentive for anyone to do the work to help patients. The doctor gets paid for 6 to 12-minute visits, the pharmacist gets paid for to get a script out the door, and the patient's being put all these roadblocks just to get better health care. I can't tell you how many patients fight like hell to get on our drug because it's changed their life, so they'll keep fighting. But then the pharma comes to the pharmacy and they're like, I don't make any money by the time I ship the drug, I lose money, right? And so then, we're trying to come up with some programs to help out with that. But our intention isn't to make people lose money, but if the wholesalers are squeezing the margins, and it's just a whole entire issue that's a big challenge in our healthcare system. And I think unfortunately, my industry, I think people take 2-3 years to learn what's happening. And I can tell you it's going to be a year or two from now, people are going to realize the first year of a drug launch isn't even a drug launch anymore. That's kind of like a layup of don't expect much. And year 2, the drug launch really starts, and then you're dealing with the payers. And if you don't price your drug rate, it's unfortunate. You may not get formulary coverage. And I'm not saying price it low. I'm saying, unfortunately, the incentives are sometimes a higher price drug. And, because if you got to pay the wholesaler money and you got to pay the distribution channel in terms of what pharmacies need to make a margin, you got to pay the rebates to the PBMs. Everyone wants money, and that's what drives up the price of drugs. And, the other side of the fence is PBMs will say, no, we don't control drug pricing. You don't, but the whole entire ecosystem of doing a prior authorization and a doctor's time and there's some companies out there, they have a nurse educator, they have a patient reimbursement person, they have a sales rep, they have a medical liaison, and then they have a call center. So you got 5 people to get over reimbursement hurdles that the PBMs put in place. And you got to pay for that, right? Someone's got to pay for that. And so that jacks up the price of drugs, whether we like it or not. The system isn't efficient, and people are going to find ways to get better health. And I just think we as a society have to find a way to make that easier for people, because it's unfortunate, but I just see how many hurdles are out there, and some of it's on our industry side. I agree with some of the challenges we've been faced with in terms of pricing accusations and things like that. And on the flip side, I think people's intent is to really help patients in the end. And no one's ever going to have 100% market share, but there's enough people to help. And how do we just streamline that process and make sure pharmacies can get paid a fair salary for what they do? And wholesalers right now, there's a monopoly out there because there's 3 wholesalers that drive most of the volume. And guess what? If you want to be in CVS, you have to work with McKesson. And if you don't pay McKesson enough money, they just mysteriously stock out of your drug. You want to work with Walgreens, guess what? You better be at ABC. And now you don't have much leverage. You can't negotiate. They want money, you got to give it to them. Otherwise, your drug doesn't get shipped to those channels. And so that's a lot of what's happening as there's been massive consolidation. People are using their power to negotiate huge rebates, huge discounts, huge controls. And then we as an industry, 80% of prescriptions, 85 are now generic. So we're surviving as an entire pharmaceutical industry and innovation with 15% of all prescriptions. So I think, I always joke when I look at the entire pharmaceutical market in 1995, it was about $100 billion. And generics were about, 10, 15, 20% share back then. You fast forward 20 years later, generics are 80% share, and the entire market's almost $400 billion. So the market's quadrupled, and that 80% of prescriptions are generics. So how did generics really bring all this cost savings? Yeah, they drive it down because of substitution overnight, but at the end of the day, probably the price of generics are higher, the price of brands are higher, and the ecosystem that we exist in is pretty complex. And so, I hate to give you a long-winded answer, but I just think that the healthcare system, has continued to grow on price and volume and innovation. And there's no good answer, but I look at Europe and prices are lower and the systems are more efficient and people have open access to care. So how do you start to look at other markets to model back here in the US? Because we have a very, very inefficient system that rewards sometimes the wrong behaviors. And I think that's just part of what we face.
What distribution channels does Mannkind Corporation use to sell Afrezza?
So today we know it's primarily a retail product. So CVS or Walgreens or independents, the frontline pharmacist is in dispensing. We as a company have positioned it more of a specialty product. So we've tried to work a little bit more on a high-touch service for reimbursement to make sure patients don't fall out of treatment, that if their health plan's giving them a hard time getting the drug, if you're a commercially insured patient, we'll give it to you for free, and we'll cover you pretty much until you get it covered, because we know 7 or 8 out of 10 patients who try to get the drug will get it. It's just a matter of how many speed bumps a health plan or a PBM want to put in front of us. But in the end, we do get patients covered, and that's what's important. So I always say, a patient and a doctor shouldn't be stuck in the middle of a healthcare reimbursement issue from a managed care plan and a drug company pricing issue. That should not be blamed on the patient. So we try to make that as easy as possible. And then what happens is after they're approved, we have a network of pharmacies that can ship directly, or we can ship to the retail site that the patient wants. So we're agnostic to the channel. I really don't care where somebody gets the drug, and I can't say right now someone does a better job than another, right? So for me, I just want patients to stay on their drug. I want them to refill it. That's a place convenient for them. But sometimes, it is difficult for people. And so we want to make sure that the reimbursement process is as easy as possible. And then where it goes from there, we support all channels.
Is there any other help that is available for pharmacies interested in purchasing Afrezza?
There's no other help. I mean, look, every wholesaler stocks it, so we work with the big three and a couple of smaller ones. Sometimes you'll be told it's out of stock. Trust me, it's never out of stock. They just didn't stock it at the local distributor. So if you can't get our product, sometimes you got to call McKesson and say, I need a box of Afrezza, give them the NDC, within a day they can get there. So I've been playing that game of cat and mouse with the wholesalers for last year. We got the product back because we're such low volume some days that that local wholesaler may not stock it at that distribution center. And then they get the first patient, and then they'll start stocking it. But so trust me, it's never out of stock. We just have to call and make sure it's delivered. And we're just now getting the brand stabilized and just getting the company going in the right direction. And so we'll look at pharmacy as another way that we can help people with diabetes, right? I think that's part of doing interviews like this and thinking about this a little bit differently. But as a pharmacist, obviously, I care tremendously about the pharmacy community and how can they play a role in healthcare. Right? I think that's important.
What are your goals for the second half of the year?
That's a great question. So second half of the year, we're looking forward to a lot of exciting things. We just filmed this week our first TV commercial, so that's we're going editing, but that'll launch in the second half of this year. And we'll look at what channels make sense, because direct TV advertising is expensive, but that doesn't mean we can't bet it in other places. We sponsored a TV show which will be launching in July called Reversed, and so that's going to be on Discovery Life, and our TV commercial will air on that. And that's taken, I think it's 5 or 7 people with diabetes to an island and really going through health and wellness and how do you take care of yourself and really get them back and engaged and motivated. So that'll be 10 episodes, and that'll film over the summer. It's filmed already. It'll be launched over the summer, and so that'll be the first time. It's really real life. I mean, you see people with amputations, you see people in wheelchairs, you see people really trying to live their life as a person with diabetes. So that to me is going to, it's controversial because the name Reverse, a lot of people say diabetes can't be reversed, right? But you can reverse your progression, right? You can take control of your life. You can stop the disease from continuing to cause damage. So that's really the goal of the show, is to help people understand, don't let a kid, right? Take care of yourself. And so Charles Maddox, who's a celebrity chef, is the producer in putting that together. Pretty soon you'll hear, we're going to announce, there's a gentleman by the name of Damon Dash who's very popular. He produced Jay-Z, he produced Kanye West, he did Rockefeller Records, he's done the clothing line, he's done art galleries, and so he'll be launching his own diabetes channel called Dash Diabetes Network in the summer, and that'll be exciting to watch, really focused on helping the African American community do outreach around that segment, and he's a really dynamic character, and also of course with type 1 who's on our drugs, so he's going to talk about that journey. And then continued execution. We're kicking off some clinical trials and pediatric trials, so really getting the company and preparing this product to continue to grow and be successful and help people with diabetes.
Is there a call to action that you want to ask your friends in the pharmacy community?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the pharmacy community is strong. There's a lot of them, and we're the first line of defense for patients, right? So I think anything you can do to help a patient live a better life and change their life and make impact, they're going to be loyal to you as a pharmacy. They're going to be excited, and then they're going to tell their friends. So I think we have a great product that can help a lot of people. And for me, I'd ask the pharmacies to find our appropriate patients, and if there's adults who can benefit from a product like this or change their life, then help them. And it's a mealtime insulin, so it's really meant to be there as part of controlling your sugars during your mealtime. And I think at the end of the day, think about how you innovate your business model. I think the pharmacy profession has struggled a long time to figure it out, and your margins continue to get squeezed. So how do you maybe use people with diabetes to help change the business model and change the focus? And we as a society are trying to move to awards for outcomes. Is there something pharmacy can take a lead on and try to work and do pilots in your communities and focus on this area, because it's a huge unmet need. And like I said earlier, 70% of people on insulin aren't at goal. So we're spending a lot of money, and you're spending a lot of time trying to help people, but they're not getting there. And so you think about it, learn about it, and see what options and how you as a pharmacy can help your patients do better and do well, live well. Because if they're doing well, you're going to have healthy patients. They're going to come back, they're going to refill their scripts, and they're going to tell their friends about you. So this is a big enough area where you can build a differentiated business model in your local community and win, and partner up with a doctor and help them understand when people are compliant, when they're not compliant, and that's the biggest missing gap when I look at healthcare is, instead of changing prescriptions, which we do often, we change it from Lipitor to Crestor. Well, maybe you just need to increase your dose of Lipitor. You weren't really taking it, but the doctor never knows that. The only person who really knows whether you're taking your drug is the pharmacist when they get the refills. And no one ever sees that part of the data. They just see that they wrote a prescription with 12 refills. And I always tell people, how many times in life have we increased doses when people weren't even taking the first dose, or we switched them between drugs and said, oh, it's not working. Well, it's not working because 90% of the time people aren't taking it. And I think Dr. Coop said, right, drugs only work when people take them. And I think that's, to me, I always tell people, if you take your drug, it's probably going to do what it's supposed to do. Some have different side effects, some have different compliance issues, some have different administration routes, but getting using your drugs and using them well as prescribed sometimes helps you get the outcomes you're looking for.
Do you have any concluding thoughts or closing messages that you would like to tell our readers and viewers?
I think life is a journey, and whether you're an independent pharmacy, a chain pharmacy, a pharmacist working in a hospital, you gotta think about how you can play a role in helping change the world. We are the frontline providers as pharmacists on people getting their drugs, and I just look at and say, how can you make a difference today than you did yesterday? How do you help a patient do a better job managing their disease, understanding their disease? Because no one's spending a lot of time with these people, and I can't tell you how many, even my own personal mom, she had a major seizure, and her doctor spent 7 minutes with her and says, here's a prescription leave. She had no idea, right? And here you got a major medical condition that you got to deal with, and if you don't know what that drug's going to do or how it's really dosed, and you got why it's important to titrate it up to control, then you leave and you're like, oh, it wasn't working, I'm just going to stay one pill a day. Well, no, you need to keep increasing your dose, and that's where pharmacists can play roles and focus on a few diseases and do well. That's my advice. Is none of us can be experts in every disease. We can understand all the drugs and drug interactions. That's our job, but to really know a disease, you got to spend some time in it. You got to work with that population, and so. That's my advice is, pick one or two diseases that you're going to have passion for and try to help build your own area out and focus and, differentiate your business model. That's what life is about, and that's what competition is about. When there's one thing that shuts down, you got to reinvent yourself and pop up somewhere else. And so, for me, I always try to reinvent my own self and reinvent the brands I work on and how we help patients. And that's what I encourage independent business owners to do. And anyone in pharmacy is, how do you help people more tomorrow than you did before? And if we keep doing that, we'll have a healthier society, we'll have happier people, and that's really what we went to school for, right? We spent 5-6 years of our life at the time to help patients, and I think you take that focus, and we're not getting reimbursed for it, and I think that's a whole other area of pharmacy that we can really, I've been impressed seeing the vaccine administration and some of those things. That's great. I think we're moving in the right direction, but we still have a lot of ways to go.
If pharmacists want to get more information, what is the best way to get in touch with you or someone at Mannkind Corporation?
You can always reach us at freedom at Mannkind Corp, MANNKIND Corp.com. We check that email daily, and always if we need samples or need a contact or find a doctor, we always answer those questions. And then you can always call us. We have operators answer the phones and reimbursement assistance called Mannkind Cares. So if you can't find us, it's probably not a good sign, because you can pretty much find us on Twitter, Facebook, or any other avenue. We have channels to reach us. And Afrezza.com, if you want more information on the product, it's AFREZZA. There's a patient portal, there's a healthcare professional portal there. And stay tuned. We have a lot of good things happening, and over time you'll continue to hear more about us and learn about the company and the product. And I encourage you to learn about it, because it's going to be coming your way, and you're going to get it for the first time and say, which box do I need? And I think that's a lot of our job, is to streamline, a lot of packages. So you'll eventually just see, 3 or 4 packages that will make your job easier as a pharmacist. But that, to me, that's the first step, is start the patient right, understand how to titrate your dose, and get them going in the right direction. So thank you, Pharmacy Edge, for coming out and meeting with us and hearing what we're doing. And please continue to do the great work you're doing to help be advocates for our profession.